Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Podcast with your host, Jeff Lopes. Jeff has over 2 decades experience as a serial entrepreneur, building brands like Kimura from his home basement to a multi-million-dollar global brand that has sold over 250,000 pairs of boxing gloves. Jeff's here to educate, guide, and drive you on the process of bringing your ideas and dreams to reality with the inspiring stories from some of the top business minds.
Welcome to episode number 37 of the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Today we got direct from the UK, a special guest. He's an educator, a speaker, author, serial entrepreneur, Rob Moore. Sit back and enjoy, everyone. We're episode number 37 of the Jeff Knows Inc. show. We are live right from the UK with Rob. I'm so excited to have Rob on. Rob is a public speaker, an author, a serial entrepreneur to say the least. And we're going to get to know Rob today and his journey and everything about him, and excited to get everything started. I always start off, Rob, with just letting our audience know who you are and what you currently are doing. And then we'll take it from there and let the conversation flow.
Sure. So I'm an entrepreneur, and I believe an entrepreneur is someone who finds meaningful solutions to the world's greatest problems. And obviously, the more meaningful solution and the greater the problem, the bigger and more globally scalable the business. So if you were to ask me who am I, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't really know anything else. I don't think I am anything else. I don't really have many hobbies.
When did your journey start? What age did you actually start your own first business or your first company or venture on your own?
Okay, well, I started working from the age of 6 when my dad got me tidying up the pubs the night before, putting all the bottles back on the shelves, replacing the empty beer kegs, emptying the pool tables and the fruit machines and counting all the money when 50 pence pieces felt like they were, huge, like the size of a plate. So that was when I was kind of raised to work. And I've had eBay businesses and various little businesses in my teens. I suppose you could say I properly started being an entrepreneur successfully when I was 25/26. And now I'm 41. So 15 years building property companies, property portfolios, training businesses, podcasts, writing books. And hey, look, if there's something new and exciting and valuable to the world that I believe I've got some experience or something to offer in, then I'm in.
Let's dive into your podcasting. When did your podcasting journey start? And you're currently running 2 podcasts, right?
Yeah. So 4.5 years ago, so it was Jan 2016, I launched The Disruptive Entrepreneur.
Yep.
And here in the UK, I don't know about the world, although it is listened to in 204 countries. I Googled how many countries are there. There's only 190 something countries. But if you look on my analytics, I am in 204 countries. I'm in the Vatican City. I'm in Burma. I didn't even know Burma was a country or where that is. That started 4.5 years ago, which I suppose in podcasting terms is quite long. I've done 540 episodes. We have many millions of subscribers and downloads. So, hey, look, I just love, Jeff, sharing content. I love talking about business and entrepreneurship. I love learning as well as teaching. If there's something I've figured out that's worked for me, I want to tell as many entrepreneurs who will listen. And if I can help people start and scale their business, get a better financial education, whatever media that is, whether it's public speaking, I've done more than 1,000 speeches, whether it's live videos on Facebook, I've done thousands of those, whether it's podcast episodes, I've done hundreds of those. I'm all in to do that. And then I have a second podcast called Money. I wrote a book called Money 3 years ago, which did really well in the UK. Now, look, I'm a big fan of studying money because I think when we're at school, we're not taught enough. That you can select economics, but really that should probably be mandatory or mandatory. But we're not taught about budgeting. We're not taught about money emotions, consumerism, commercialism. We're not taught about how to save and invest. We're not taught about money, and I so strongly believe, that we should be. So when I had read hundreds of books on money, I became a millionaire before age 31, Jeff. I remember that because I wanted to do before 30. So I felt like I'd kind of failed, missed the boat by 6 months. But I felt like I still wanted to get more experience, more knowledge under my belt before I wrote my one book on it. Because whilst you can write more than one book on money, really your first book's got to be the book on money. So, you know, my companies had done more than 100 million in revenue before I wrote that book. And then, 2 to 3 years ago. Now, my concept for money was I'd read a lot of books on money mindset, how to make money, money emotions, but there didn't seem to be like an encyclopedia where it's talked about the story, the psychology, the emotions, the history, the strategy, the tools and the tactics. And I wanted to be the first person in the world to write a book on all those subjects of money in one book. The original initial version is 250,000 words. So it's obviously huge when an average book might be 30 to 50,000. But it got edited down for kind of more commercial use for about 150,000 words. So really my concept behind money was almost like an encyclopedia, all things you want to learn about money. You can learn about all the currencies that happened over the years. You can learn about all the different belief issues that people have around money, that they don't deserve money, that money is the root of all evil. And then also the back half of the book are viable, scalable strategies and tactics that people can use that aren't like popular today, but gone tomorrow to actually make more money.
I'm going to touch back on one thing you were talking about before, Rob, is how you love passing on your knowledge. Throughout the years of meeting so many entrepreneurs, you have your vast degrees of some individuals. They hold close to their vest their knowledge. They almost scare to pass it on. And then there's others that love passing on, whether it's to their employees, to their coworkers, to their other entrepreneurs. They almost want to sprinkle their knowledge and pass what they learn on. And I love that point because it's so important to pass on what you learn, because holding on is not doing anything. It's not helping anyone. So I love that part. You want to dive into that? And where was your mindset with that? How did that all pass on?
Yeah. So I agree with you, Jeff. I suppose it's the difference between having a scarcity or an abundance mindset. And I think it's also about what's your experience in life. And I suppose it's also what's your vocation. If you're an estate agent or a realtor, you don't want to tell all the other realtors your tools and tricks because they're just going to go and compete with you. But in my industries and businesses, when I teach people, one, it's a separate viable business model. I mean, our education business is in its best year did 21 million in sterling revenue. So in American dollars, that's probably now 25 plus million. I don't know what it is in Canadian, but that's a pretty good business. It's not bad to get paid gross, 20 million there or thereabouts for sharing knowledge and information. So is it a viable business model? Well, it is for me. If I share my strategies and tactics, will it hurt me? And like if you have a license or if you have an invention, you're not going to go and tell everyone and you're going to patent that. And I completely accept that, but it doesn't hurt me to share my information. And then also, what do you like to do? Some people don't really like teaching or training or sharing. They don't really feel inspired by it. They can't see the benefit of it. Whereas me, I love doing it. It makes me feel valuable, makes me feel like I'm growing my community, my county, my country. I think social media and the internet is set up for you to give valuable information to people that they can implement. I believe in fair exchange, which is the more people you help, the more you will get helped, whether that's financially or emotionally. And also for me, and I can't say this is for everyone, but I was a bottler most of my life, Jeff, i.e. if I had problems or people picked at me or if I felt wronged or whatever, I'd bottle it in. And that'd be really unhealthy for me. And that'd make me very angry and bitter. And I'd have a lot of shame. And I would just get really sort of toxic inside. And actually sharing, now not, by the way, going around shouting and screaming at everyone, but if I can have a challenge and someone can criticize me, and then I can teach how to overcome that challenge without criticizing them back, that's a really healthy way to exercise your own demons. So I guess in a way, just to be very open about this, Jeff, it's kind of personal therapy really for me to also share content. So it's a great business model. It's valuable to society. It makes me feel good and valuable. It's kind of therapy to me. And the world right now is geared up towards that. 40 years ago, the world wasn't really geared up for information. But now Facebook will give you supporter status. They'll give you stars. You can do paid live events. You've got all these premium features. There's Netflix. There's podcast premium now. We're coming into a really great time to be someone who's got information to share.
Yeah, it's amazing how the world has changed. And I wouldn't even go 40. I would even probably say the last 10 years, even 5 to 10 years, how everything is just drastically changing. And in the world of technology, I was speaking to another entrepreneur the other day about this whole pandemic and how it's forced a lot of people, baby boomers in the past, to learn technology. You're getting all the grandmas and grandpas having to start learning how to do live chat or Zooms and stuff to talk to their grandkids and stuff. So it's almost like this pandemic has sped us up another 10 years in the way everybody uses technology, which is pretty amazing. And as an entrepreneur, you got to take advantage of that opportunity, right? Let's go back and talk about your past. You said your dad owned pubs when you were growing up. And so you're in that, I guess, obviously restaurant industry and pub industry. Was that something that ever thought of venturing into, or is this something you just worked and then went on your own different avenues?
Both, I'd say. So I loved being raised in pubs because from a young age, I could play pool and hustle against the customers. My dad, one of his best customers who was the best at pool that used to come in the pub, my dad got him to teach me pool and to teach me to hustle, really. Hustle in the work, i.e. I'm a 7-year-old kid. You could probably beat me. Let's play for a pound. So I loved that. I loved the freedom. I'd wander down in a really busy pub when I was 7, 8, 9 years old. And my dad was very entrepreneurial, and he'd buy pubs and bars and clubs and hotels and restaurants. His business would go up and down, up and down. He probably was a millionaire at one point. Then he was probably bust. Then he would probably made it all back again. He had lots of pubs in Mildenhall, Lakenheath, the big US air bases in the UK. And then when the Gulf War happened, all the Americans living on the bases around the area just literally were gone. And so his businesses got really damaged. He protected me from seeing his difficult times in business. And I really looked up to Dad and wanted to be like him, I guess. So that's where I suppose the entrepreneurial flair. I'm definitely a rebel. And it's not, I've tried to learn being told what to do, but my natural instinct when someone tells me what to do is to do the opposite. So it's very difficult, therefore, for me to be employed. I'm not very employable because of that, which of course is good as well. But I think I always knew that I needed something of my own. I don't know why, but I felt like if I had pubs, or even if I ran my mum and dad's pubs, I would never really be able to say I did something for myself and I built something from the ground up. Now, to be honest, nepotism or setting up on your own, I don't really think it makes much difference. By the way, sometimes it can be harder to take on your parents' business and then take it to the next level. So I respect people who could do that. But there was something inside of me. And I think it was because I relied on my parents through sixth form, college, university, until age 25/26. My mum and dad paid for me to go to university. They paid for the student accommodation. All right, I'd work in the pub weekends, but really they were paying me, but they were really giving me money to pay for my lifestyle. And I built up quite a lot of debt from university fees and a student accommodation and drinking and a car loan and stuff like that. And then I got to about 25 and really felt like I was lost and I didn't have a business. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I've been working in mum and dad's pub since university because dad wasn't very well. But I really felt quite dependent and juvenile, and I didn't feel like I had autonomy or something of my own. And I think there was always a calling there. So I actually started on my own as an artist in my early to mid-20s. Had 2 or 3 all right years. I just couldn't really get rid of the debt. If I'd have started from zero, I might have done all right, because I was in debt. Debt compounds just like earnings do. And then I got into property in 2006, kind of a bit by accident. And then I set up my own company in 2007, and then, with a business partner. And when I've really felt like I had something that was mine or mine and my business partners, I guess I had that extra accountability and that extra drive, and to prove some people wrong and to prove myself right. Look, the industry of leisure in this country, Jeff, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but the pub and restaurant and bar and hotel trade's been really disrupted.
It's incredible. You're talking about the pandemic currently.
Before the pandemic, there was a smoking ban in Britain probably 20 years ago. And that halved my dad's trade overnight because obviously people had to go stand outside to have a cigarette. And so that changed the social dynamic. Went off licenses where you could just go and buy drinks, from a supermarket. I think the supermarkets got their license, 25 years ago. So you've got the supermarkets having a license. You've got the smoking ban. You've got cafes. And I mean, in England, it used to be the pub. You used to go to the pub. Everyone went to the pub. Now there's bars, there's bistros, there's, clubs, there's cafes. There's all sorts of hybrids now. So Dad couldn't reinvent himself or evolve quick enough. I guess he got older and found it difficult to adapt to change. And then he had some illnesses. And I just it's not a business model, I think, that's got a future. I think you've got to disrupt that area. So, little boutique-y houses that people are renting out the rooms and doing on Airbnb and booking.com, that's probably more effective than setting up a big hotel now. Leveraging online business models instead of, having to have premises and stock and all that risk, having outsourcers and VAs as opposed to loads of staff and overhead. So I don't really like the business model, and it's not one I'm inspired by. And, my personal vision is to help as many people on the planet start and scale their business and get a better financial education. I spent a lot of years trying to figure that out through property and business and writing books and training people in property and business and speaking. But so I'm inspired to do anything that helps me teach people to manage and master their money, to start and scale their business. That's my
Let me jump back, Rob, with your artist as you started off. What type of art were you into, and was that something you focused on in university, or?
No, just after university. I focused on drink at university. So we used to play Mario Kart, and the winner would have to drink a single shot, second double shot, third triple shot, and last quadruple shot. And we played 20 rounds of this, but even before, this was before we used to go out. So my mind I didn't even do any study. I didn't care about architecture. I just went to university because that's the rite of passage. If you're smart enough to go to university, that's a rite of passage. I actually wish someone had stopped me and put their arm around me and gone, Rob, do you really want to go to university? Do you really want to do architecture? You don't have to go to university. You can start your own business. You can do it from your bedroom or living above your mum and dad's pub. You could work a few shifts in the pub and start your own business on the side on the internet. You could start as an artist. You're 18 years old. You've got I wasn't around the right people telling me those things. So, I got a bit distracted. And then basically it dawned on me. I had a big argument with my dad. And he basically said, get out. And I said, fine, although we were swearing at each other and throwing things at each other at the time. And I was walking out of the pub because I used to live next door to the pub. And it dawned on me, I have to do something on my own. I can't be relying on my parents or on this trade that I don't enjoy. I didn't enjoy it. My parents knew it. I knew it. And the only thing I could do was paint and draw. And I say this with humility because I'm not one to brag, because there's so much more I want to do in my life. But to my knowledge, and I was told this by my tutor, I was the only person in the whole of the country in my year to get 100% at GCSE art. And so GCSE in the UK is the exams you do when you're 15. So they're big things. You've got your GCSE, A level, and then your university degree. They're the big three: 15, 17, and then 21, something like that. And it's very difficult to get 100% at art because it's so subjective. And I got 100%. So draw and paint is something I could do. So when Dad said, get out the pub, fine, get out, I walked out and I was like, well, what can I do? And the only thing I knew how to do was to paint. I didn't see how I had any other skills in any other area of life. So I thought, well, let's give that a go. What have I got to lose? Not much. So I was still quite young. So I started painting. Now, your question was, what kind of art did I do? So because I like to be a bit of a contrarian, I like to do the opposite of everyone else. I like to do art that got people talking, that was modern, that had a message in it. So it wasn't contemporary, it wasn't fine art, although I could do both. It was just anything and everything that was different and unique and creative and would get people to talk. Sometimes maybe a little bit political. There was certainly a message in there that would get people to think. So I'd often do big paintings with stamps or jelly babies, or I just, wouldn't necessarily throw paint at canvas, but I'd use steel instead of canvas, and I'd pour instead of use brush work. I was always trying to experiment to do something a little bit different. But I always say the reason I failed at art is because I was just too early for Peterborough, my hometown. I was too London for Peterborough. I just came too early. Peterborough misunderstood me. But the great thing about my art journey was it got me doing something for myself. It got me managing my own money. It got me selling. It got me marketing. Badly, by the way. But it was that bridge.
Lessons, right?
And then, obviously, exactly, and managing your own time and managing your own emotions. And like, you got to feed yourself, right? I better get out there then. I better go and walk around all the galleries in Peterborough with my portfolio under my arm. Because if I don't, I'm not, I'm not paying my bills this month. But I still was too reserved. I wasn't commercial enough. I was too shy. Had too much fear, too much worry about rejection, all of this. But then getting into property and selling properties, that was the next level, because selling properties is another level to selling art. And, you have to learn how to do that.
What was your first property you purchased? Was it a house? Was it a townhome, or what was it?
Well, technically the first one I purchased was the one next door to the pub that I lived in, which was bought in 2003. I still own that to this day. I actually gave it to my mum and dad. So my dad helped me with the deposit. I put the money I had in, but not much, and he made the rest up as a deposit, which was most of the deposit. And I lived there, so I bought that 17 odd years ago. And then I was able to help my mum and dad retire because I became financially free in my mid to late 20s, became, like I said, a millionaire before age 31. So I was able to then give back to my mum and dad. So part of their retirement is they didn't retire with anything in the pub trade. It just wiped them out. So I just said, look, you can live it. I'm going to get it back because it's through inheritance. But said, mum and dad, you can live in the house. And my mum works for me, and I was able to help them retire. So that was a good feeling.
Yourself as an artist now, is there something as an artist now, is this something you still do as a hobby? Is it just something you actually still have a passion for, or you completely put that aside?
I definitely have a passion for art, music, poetry, anything creative. Love a really well shot, well made film. Love brilliant acting. Love amazing music, fashion. Love great fashion. So there's definitely within my veins a love of anything artistic and creative. I just have managed to get my creative needs, juices flowing and met through a different vehicle, because I think you can be creative in any endeavor.
Yeah,
you can
100%.
be making £100,000 watch, a £300,000 car, a little or a piece of origami out of a piece of paper, creating a really good product, your pivot or your reaction to the lockdown and how you now create online courses rather than face-to-face, how quickly you could get masks out to the market and sell masks and hand sanitizer. I think all of these things, they're a creative endeavor if you make it. So I don't paint anymore. I have done a couple of paintings. I've sort of come out of retirement, and I've just built a studio at home, and I'm thinking of doing one of the walls with something. I've been trying to look for nice lights or wall features, and I haven't found any. And I'm thinking about doing my own piece of art for that, for the studio. So it's there. And I might also auction a couple of my pieces for charity, because I've got, a good sized following now. And I've got some of my old pieces that I've kept. But yeah, like there's a lot of things in my life that I've done that will still be there. The martial arts I used to do, and some of the more creative endeavors.
Let's dive into that. Let's take a little step back. Martial arts. I don't know if you know anything much about what I do. One of my companies I've run for 15 years is called Kimura, where I manufacture and design our own brand of martial art and boxing equipment.
Oh, wow.
So that was something that's a little picked on me. What type of martial arts did you study?
Okay, so I did it for maybe 21 to 26, so 5 years.
Yeah.
I did Qina, Qigong, Chinese kickboxing, and then I just settled for the last 18 months on just standard kickboxing, hardcore, sort of more like street fighting type kickboxing, which I loved. I loved the sparring element. I loved it because the fittest I ever was in my life when I do endless rounds of sparring.
There's nothing like sparring, getting your heart rate going.
Oh,
once you know you're going to get punched in the face, everything changes. Your heart rate, your adrenaline, your movement, everything changes, and you realize the cardiovascular level of some of these athletes is next to none.
Insane. And anything else you do, when you get to your absolute limit, you stop. But you could get to your limit halfway through a round, and you have to protect yourself from getting pummeled.
Yeah.
So you can't stop. I'm 6'3", so I loved everything legs. So I never really liked stuff on the ground. So yeah, I did that for 5 years. And now this is something that I've started to talk to people about, because when I started my business, I didn't know it at the time, but within 1 year, everything pretty much I did outside of business, I stopped, because you get into the full work mode, the hustle mode on. And there's a lot of people in America that teach that hustle mode. But I've now just got back I've got a Wing Chun instructor coming over to teach me at home, because, the way I see it, I'm 41 and I am still quite fit. But Wing Chun you can be doing when you're 80 or 90, whereas cage fighting you probably aren't going to.
No.
So I thought I'll do an art that I can do anywhere. You can stand in a park or stand in your living room and do Wing Chun. You can do your forms there. And something that I could do for many years to come. But I've gone through this process now where financially I'm good. I've made more than enough money to live my life and a few more generations to come. So I'm now looking for things more that make me feel complete and whole as a person. Now, you at the start, Jeff, asked me, who am I? And I said, I'm an entrepreneur. And that's been my identity for 15 years. But if you were to say to me, hey, Rob, who are you when you're not an entrepreneur? That would be a harder question for me to answer. Who am I? Okay, I like music. I like art, but I don't really do art. You'd catch me. You'd stump me on that, because I probably didn't keep many of my friendships going that I should have done. Look, I've still got friends and they'll still be there.
Yeah.
I didn't work on them because I was working on my business. I didn't work on any hobby. Like I said, like martial arts was one of them, and I dropped it. So when you take away the books, the podcasts, the money, the businesses, because I've got quite a lot of businesses, the properties, what's left? And, people say, look, you are not what you do, and you shouldn't let your accolades define you, but mine kind of do. So as I'm 41 and I've got reevaluate the next decade of my life, I'm going to pursue more friendships, which I've done this year, and that's been really good. I'm going to pursue a couple or three hobbies. So probably golf, because I was a single figure golfer when I was in I was 14. Martial arts, definitely. And then maybe one thing, maybe drums. But have something a bit more,
it's finding the balance, right? It's finding the balance, because money doesn't bring happiness, right? It's finding the balance. Do you have a life partner?
Yes.
Do you have children?
Yes.
How old are your children? How many children do you have?
My children are 5, 6 next week, and 9. So
we're very similar. I'm 43. I have a 14. I started a little younger than you. I have a 14 and a 12-year-old. My daughter's 14. My son's 12. My daughter's just hitting high school. And I've been self-employed for 24 years. My main company, Come Over, has been 15 years now. We started in 2006, January 2006. And it's always finding that balance. One thing I've always done is find that balance, because I've always had that mindset, Rob, is you don't want to live with regrets. And what I mean by that is I hear a lot of, like you were speaking earlier, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of individuals that are just hustle, work. And they don't put that time aside to see their parents, put the time to spend with their friends. And all of a sudden something happens to one of their parents and they sit back and they're like, you know what, I should have done this. I should have done. So I've always lived my life thinking, hey, I'm lucky enough. My parents still live about half an hour drive from where we are. And I could drive down and just have a coffee with my dad, spend some time with my parents. And I appreciate that time, because there is going to be a moment they're not going to be there, or vice versa. Friends come and go. Don't get me wrong. I have a very tight knit circle of friends, and you have a lot of associates, you have a lot of friends, but you have your little close knit that people you truly could confide in times of need. But having that balance where, I'll give you an example, like I work 16-hour days, but I'm home for dinner every single night with my kids. I make sure I have put to allocate. If my kids, I couldn't give a rat's ass what I'm doing. If my daughter says, Dad, I need this for dance, or you record, I stop everything and I do it with them. And that's something. My dad was a 9 to 5 hard-working blue collar, worked crazy hours, worked at a Ford dealership, not a dealership, a Ford Motors factory. So he worked 2 weeks day, 2 weeks night. But you know what? One thing I'll remember with my dad growing up was anytime I needed something, he was there. He would put everything aside. And that's something I've always tried to pass on to my kids, is knowing that they could count on their dad no matter how stressed, how busy he is. I'll put everything aside and get it done. And that's something I think is a lack with a lot of entrepreneurs is that hustle. I got to get there. And then when they get there, are they really happy? So find that balance. And I appreciate you saying that because you're still young. So finding that balance is so important to you and to your loved ones too, right? Your family, they're going to appreciate that so much more when you get to a certain age, because the happier you are with yourself, with your balance, the more you're going to pass that joy to everyone else, right?
Amen to that. Completely agree, Jeff. And that's probably something I have struggled with in the last 3 years. When my son was 5 and 6, he was playing in the World Golf Championships, the European Golf Championships. We were traveling the world. I was spending loads of time with him. And then when that sort of slowed down and we decided for it to not be pushed or come from me anymore, it had to come from him. And then for various reasons, success in growing or some challenges and disruptions, it's very easy to get slipped back into doing a lot of work. Then you become addicted to the work. Then you tell yourself you need to do the work to keep the thing going, even though I've got 95 staff and, I've got all these resources. And so, I've probably not been very good at this balance. And people always ask me about work-life balance. And I usually say, well, I'm not the best role model because I'm trying to figure it out like everyone else. And it sounds like you've got it sorted, Jeff, which is great. And that's a significant change that I've made in the last few weeks. So we're quite fresh on this.
Yeah.
I've worked out that I could get, let's say we're 15 to 20 million. Lockdown, we're actually way more profitable, but on less turnover. But let's say our companies I've got various companies, I have to compartmentalize them. So the ones I'm talking about, the training businesses, there's 2 of them. Let's just say they're 15 million. The best year was 21. So let's say they're 15 million sterling. I think I can get them to 50 million in 3 to 5 years, and I can work 3 hours a day. And that's a more specific goal than getting my companies to 50 million globally. Because if I don't make that 3 hours a day caveat, then I'm going to be working 15 hours a day. Yeah. And generally when I work more, my staff are less empowered. So how am I going to make them more empowered? By working less. So we had a Zoom meeting today to plan our events, and our head of events in one of our companies came up with a brilliant idea. And I thought one of the reasons he's been able to come up with a brilliant idea is because I'm not coming up with all the ideas and I'm not dominating the conversations and I'm letting them. I just sat and listened, really.
Is that something you struggle with? Because I think that's something a lot of, I'll be honest, even myself, is a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with allowing and trusting others, because they always in their mind feel like they could do something a little better. They could do it. And it's true. No matter what, no one's going to give a rat's ass about your business more than you are. Let's just be clear. And the biggest problem every entrepreneur will have, whether you're a global brand that has hundreds of thousands of employees, or you're a mama papa shop at a pub or a little clothing boutique and you got 3 employees, your biggest issue you're always going to have is employees. So as an entrepreneur, you always sit back and you're like, okay, I could do this better. And I had a guest on, Ray Kerr. He's an ex-Navy SEAL in the US, and he brought this to my attention. It was just the way he broke it up. It made so much more sense. Is first off, no one's going to care about your business like you do. I think we're all aware of that. But he said every employee has their own strengths, and you just have to maximize their strength. And as a team, you have to look at it as a business as a team. You can't look at it as a business as a family, because the minute you do that, you'll fall apart. It's a team, like a sport team. You're going to have your strengths and your weaknesses. You're going to have your top players and your weaker players. But as a team, you're going to get to your end goal. And that's one thing he said was, is you just have to pull the strengths of your best employees and let the other ones carry on, and trust in them, and slowly start trusting. And it's hard, man. It's hard for me, and I'm sure it was hard for you. It's trusting in those individuals to make the right choices. And they're not always going to, but you have to just work with the process, right?
Yeah. So I would say you have to let go to grow.
100%.
I also, because I coach loads of entrepreneurs, I've helped hundreds of thousands of them over the last 15 years. And the entrepreneur's paradox is that you get to the point where you're doing everything and you know you need help, but you feel like you can't afford staff. If you have staff, you feel like they might mess it up. And you also feel like you've probably got to train them. And therefore, that's going to take you time, but you might as well just bloody well do it yourself than train them. And then what happens is an entrepreneur will wait too late until everything's breaking. And then they'll go, oh, right, I'm going to get a PA or someone in admin. They'll bring them in. They won't give them any training, any onboarding. There'll be no vision. They'll just be like, get me out of this emergency. They'll mess it up because they haven't been trained. And then the entrepreneur will go, oh, I knew it would never work. What's the point in, paying them to do a job and then having to do it myself? They have too much locus of control, and then they let them go and they say it didn't work. But if you look at every company that's 10 staff, 100 staff, 1,000 staff, 5,000 staff, 50,000 staff, 500,000 staff. I think Walmart, it's 2 million staff, I think, at one point. They all started in their bedroom, in their pants, doing all the admin and everything themselves. So if one entrepreneur can do it, every entrepreneur can do it. You just have to figure what entrepreneurs do to scale. What do they do to scale? And I'll list a few things. So I certainly agree with what you said. I've got some things to add. Number one is there has to be a clear vision of where you want to go. And that vision has to be exciting for people. So if I said to you, Jeff, hey, look, the vision of my training companies is to help as many people on this planet start and scale their business and become successful entrepreneurs, and to get better financial education, and to, make more money, to give more money away, to, build foundations and libraries and schools across the world. If you're like, yeah, man, I'm in, then you haven't just got a job. You've got something bigger than just a job. So if you can make what the work that you do for your employees not just a job, you're kind of winning. I like to hire intrapreneurs, internal employed entrepreneurs. That's the first thing. The next thing is you have to hire the right person for the job. And often, by the way, you and me are the wrong person for the jobs we're doing. I'm the wrong person for admin. I'm the wrong person for accounts. I'm the wrong person for finance. I'm the right person for sales and marketing and vision and strategy. And when you do everything yourself as an entrepreneur, half the jobs you're wrong for. So you have to outsource those. And here's something I hear a lot, which I think is, quite frankly, too best one-sided and maybe even nonsense. There's a lot of people, there's been a big movement over the last 10, 15 years, which says you should always hire on attitude, because experience and the job can be taught, but attitude can't. I disagree. I do not want a positive, happy, jovial coder. I want a coder who's fucking good at coding, who can code better than anyone else, who can do a good job of coding. Can he build me the best app, the best software that's going to change the world? If he can, and he's grumpy and obnoxious and he's not really a team player, stick him in a dark room, give him a load of Red Bull and Pro Plus, and let him go and do an amazing job.
The whole Google mindset, right?
There you go. And some sports teams will build their team around one very egocentric or one star. You can have 11 stars, but you can have one. So people say, I'll hire on attitude only because you can teach skills. You can't teach someone, well, you could teach coding, but do you want to spend 10 years teaching someone to be a good coder because they're going to wear your t-shirt and turn up on time and, high five you in the office? Or do you want to hire someone who can do the job, who can really do the job?
Yeah, of course.
So I'm a fan on hiring people who can do the job. The next thing, though, is I think you have to have a variety of people in your company. There's a great book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I'm a Liverpool fan, and Liverpool are owned by a company that I think they have an American baseball team as well. And the film Moneyball was based on this company. And they basically, I wouldn't say they hired a lot of misfits and found a way to put them together, but they kind of did hire individuals that maybe on their own, you'd be like, I'm not sure that that would work. But when they put them together as a team, they created something, 1 + 1 = 11. So I'm certainly a fan of having a variety of people in your company. Some people are all about the vision, the values, the strategy. Some people are about the technical aspects, and you've got specialists. I think a good entrepreneur is a generalist, and they know how to put a lot of specialists together who are best in the world at their roles, to get that job done. I think that you have to let people make mistakes. And generally speaking, right, you've got kids. You have probably told your kids 1,000 times something, and they only learn when they do it. So I'll give you an example. We've got these quite tall breakfast stools where we've got in the kitchen, we've got this breakfast bar and it's high. And I have told my kids 1,000 times, don't lean back on those chairs, don't lean back on those chairs, don't lean back on those chairs. And the only way they learn is when they fall back on their chairs and bang their head or hit their chin on the breakfast bar. And then they learn. So with staff, you can teach them, you can train them, you can onboard them, and that's good. But really, you have to let them fail. And then the next thing is, I could go on about this for ages, as you can see, Jeff, you have to trust them. And I have found with some of my staff, and it's not even conscious on my part or their part, but ultimately, they know I'll come and look after them. They'll know if they need me at the 11th hour, or if we need to rescue something, or we just need to do something big. They always know they can call on Rob. So what that means is it means they stay at a lower level. They don't really step up. And also, if it goes wrong, they can always just blame Rob. Whereas if I'm out of it, they have to step up. And if it goes wrong, they have to own it. And I don't, I'm pretty forgiving with mistakes. I don't really lay into people with mistakes. I'm probably a bit on the soft side, to be honest, Jeff. But I'm more interested in how people react to mistakes than actually them making them in the first place. And sometimes I think, well, actually, that mistake, I like the thinking behind that mistake. Okay, you executed it wrong, but what you were trying to do, I like. The behavior behind the mistake was good. But really, you have to let people make mistakes if you want to grow, and let them become better than you. I think there's always this entrepreneurial thing, no one can do the job as well as me. Well, there are better salespeople in the world than me. I might be good, but there's better. There's better marketers in the world than me. I might be good, but there's better. There's better podcasts in the world than me. Mine's good, but there's better. So in every specialism that I do as a generalist, there's people out there that are better than me. Always. So it's arrogant of me to think that no one can do this job as well as me. The only job people can't do as well as me is being me. That's it.
With your, how many books do you have out right now?
16. 16.
Good for you. Good for you. When was the first book you published or you got out?
2008, Property Investing Secrets.
And you were how old?
2007, Property Investing Secrets. So
you were in your early 30s?
28.
Is this something you're constantly working on? Are you actually looking on your next book, or is this something you're selling on? Because it takes a lot of time.
So I'm writing 3 books at the moment, and they're all in various stages, but 2 are nearly finished. So I've got.
Do you work with ghostwriters? Do you work with people to help you out, or is it more you're still your own time?
So I used to write them all myself. Yeah. So when I say 16 books, maybe half of them have got my name on the cover. Maybe half of the ones that are left have got my name and someone else's name on the cover, like my business partner, Mark Homer. And the others are I ghost wrote or helped. I co-wrote, but we didn't put my name on the cover. So if you search my name for my books, there's probably 8, 9 with my name on it. And I got to the point with my last book where I was like, I want to change my strategy. I've written in this way. I've written in lots of different ways, but so now I've done we're actually just signing the contracts at the moment with a ghostwriter who's going to basically take my work and write for me, and I will send them voice memos or repackage content I've got together, or sit down with them for a few days and brain dump all my ideas on them. So I actually traditionally wrote them or transcribed them myself and edited them myself. But I want to write. There's a lot of books I want to write. So I've got one I'm partnering with someone in the UK. He's very famous in the UK for the wrong reasons. Gerald Ratner, his name is. He was the biggest guy in jewelry in fact, in Europe. He was doing more than $1 billion in turnover in the 80s. But he made a big gaffe. And so we've written a book called Reinventing Yourself. My book Opportunity, which is just me, it just needs one more edit, which is the one I'm doing at the moment. And then I'm in the middle of a book called Residual Income. I want to write a book on building income streams because I think it's vital for people. So they're the 3 books that I'm sort of writing as we speak. And
are you a strong believer in passive income?
So yes and no. Everything is about language and definition.
Yeah.
So do I believe that you can have recurring residual income that you no longer need to exchange time for money? Yes. I'll give you an example. Slade. I don't know if you remember that song. It's Christmas. Yeah. Every year they make over 500,000. Mariah Carey makes loads every Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that passive income? Yes. Are they playing the gigs every Christmas? No. But 35, 40 years ago, did they have to gig? Did they have to write the music? Yes. So I believe you have to set to forget. You have to work hard enough not to have to work hard. Like, you have to build the franchise. You have to invest in and refurbish the property. You have to write the book. You have to create the podcast episodes. But can you get to a point when those assets are created and then the income is passive? Yes, you can. So Jeff, if you did a deal with the sponsor and then they paid you $5,000 a month, well, you're already doing the podcast. It's no extra time. And that sponsorship revenue would be passive, but you had to set to forget and you had to work hard enough not to have to work hard. So that's why I called the book Residual Income and not Passive Income. And also passive income is sometimes associated with the get rich quickie, schemey,
100%.
a bit unrealistic-y stuff. Yeah. And I want my definition to be clear. And that's why I called it residual. I think residual and recurring are, similar to passive. Yeah. But there's just not the connotation of get rich quick.
I'm gonna jump into something that I have strong opinions about. Is you've always had a partner in your main company, and you've been with this partner for how many years now?
Since I started, 15 years.
Okay, and that's obviously a good relationship, strong relationship. You would say? I
think that is a vital relationship, and without each other, I can't speak for him. I can only speak for me. But certainly speaking for me, without him, I probably would have car crashed a good.
Where'd you meet your partner? How'd you guys meet with your school? Like, where'd you originally meet?
We met at a property networking event, the very first one I went to at the end of 2005.
Okay.
In our local city in Peterborough.
Why am I dipping into that is I've had numerous companies I've started, I've sold over the years, and I've dipped my toes into partnership a few times, and I don't know if it's my own self, my own drive. I feel like I'm always the hardest worker in the room, and then it clings with me, annoys me when I have a partner that doesn't put the same time into it, the same effort, and it's something that's never worked.
So if you're the sort of person that is highly exaggerated skill set, you're probably going to need someone to yin your yang, yang your yin.
Yeah, to balance you out.
Exactly. So, but some people are quite all-rounderish, in which case they don't need a partner. The next thing is your partner doesn't have to be your co-founder. Your partner could be your PA. Your partner could be your MD. Your partner could be your ops manager. And I bet you've got some staff, Jeff, which are quite close to partners because they're really good and they advise you and support you. They're just not a classic, co-founder with 50-50 shareholding. So my MD, I definitely see her as a partner, not as an employee. In fact, she's just signing a partnership agreement with us, so she will be an official partner. The final thing is, you said, I'm the hardest working guy. No one works as hard as me. But you're measuring value based on time. Now, I used to think, oh, man, I'm working 15 hours a day. Mark's doing 7 barely. But he had way more experience than me, way more money than me, way more contacts than me. And that was worth more than my extra hours. So if you value people based on your own measures and metrics, and they are time, because when you have someone on the board, they might just spend 2 hours a month in a board meeting, but they could say something that could make you 10 million pounds, or they could make an introduction that could make you 10 million pounds. So I try not to measure people just on time.
Yeah, that was well said.
Yeah.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. With yourself, when you look back now as an entrepreneur in your 40s, and I've done this and I've reflected on this quite a few times, could you now not see moments, like you're saying, when you were young, hustling in your parents' pub, that we're almost like highways to where you are now as an entrepreneur. You had that hustle, you had that drive as a kid. You're a natural entrepreneur. You just obviously had to find your time to be there. Do you not see that now?
I'm definitely not a natural entrepreneur because I don't think anyone is a natural anything. Okay, when you're born,
so you don't believe that, huh? That you're a natural entrepreneur or not?
No.
Okay,
No.
I do believe in that. I think we're opposite there. I think there's some people that are just you're born to lead and born to be an entrepreneur, right? And I find that's why that's the biggest benefit with people that run franchises is you get a lot of people that want to be independent, who want to be entrepreneurs, but they don't have what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And that's why a franchise have that structure helps them, right?
Yeah. So I would argue that if you're a basketball player, being tall genetically helps. Although there are obviously some famous basketball players who are not much more than 5.5 feet.
Yeah.
So I would argue that there are physical attributes that are advantageous that you are born with. But until a doctor can find a DNA entrepreneur and, a DNA for entrepreneurship and prove it, it's a theory, Jeff.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that my way is right, but I think leadership, rebellion, disruption, single-mindedness, I think these are taught traits, which every human being has latent. So when you're born, I believe that every human being, unless there's something physically wrong with your brain chemistry, some people are born with physical ailments, but that aside, every human being is latent, infinite potentiality, whereby every human being has every human emotion. It has potential, every human skill and trait and talent that could ever be latent within them. And then the environment forms that. So I believe you could take me and give me the same upbringing as Mozart, and I could be Mozart, as long as we can't prove that genetically he had an advantage physically. Because you've got to take the physical element out, because some people are more physically advantageous. So I believe environment, upbringing, media, experience. So I believe leadership is not born. I believe it's born in everyone, but it's taught based on our parents, our experiences, etc. So my dad, from quite a young age, put me in an environment where I watched him, and he was rebellious, and he was disruptive, and he was entrepreneurial, and that's where I got it from. But I didn't have it when I was born, that I can see, because I've not yet seen a doctor prove those genetics. Like that XY chromosome, that's the number one golfer chromosome. Because if it was genetic, then you'd have to say not just what it is, but where it ranks. So, what makes someone have $1 billion company or $100 million company or $1 million company? If it's genetic, that would have to be ranked. But it's environment and it's extreme values. And values, what's most important to us? Well, if family is highest on your values, then you're probably not going to build the world's biggest company. You're going to build the world's most content family. And if you look at Elon Musk's values, it would be highly exaggerated in vision. And I don't know what his values are, but his company and his mission would be really high in his values. And entrepreneurs get divorced a lot. Families low on their values. So I think it's romantic, and I think it's convenient, and I think it's not responsible to say that someone is a born entrepreneur, because if you say it's born, you can't change it. Whereas if you say it's developed through your environment, you can. So let's say I was not entrepreneurial at all, and I was raised in an environment which meant, toe the line, do the job you're told to do, work hard, clock in, clock out, conform, get to 65, retire. And the person who taught me that, let's say he had a heart attack the day he was supposed to retire. And I was like, Jesus, I've been taught my whole life that this is the way. And now he's died and he's got no retirement. I need to take control. And I go and follow your podcast and my podcast and follow entrepreneurs and watch their videos and listen to their podcasts and read their books and go to seminars. I think I can change. And I think my environment can shape me to be an entrepreneur, even though it had previously raised me to be something else. It's just my theory.
Interesting. No, interesting. I'm going to disagree on my side, obviously, and that's what makes the amazing conversation, right? I was brought in, like I said, my parents are both blue collar, hardworking. I was brought in that environment as a young age. My dad was like, you know what, being a police officer is probably the best career path for you. and they were pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And to this day, my closest friends are all officers of the law. And as a young age, 16 years old, I started my first company. I couldn't justify working for somebody. As a young age, I always had that hustle where it's like I couldn't. And from day one, I've always been self-employed. I could not justify taking orders. I had that rebellions to myself. So, and I've met a lot of people in that same mindset. So I do believe that there's some triggers in your mind that push people to. Don't get me wrong. You could learn and life changes, life moments in life that will change your path. But I do believe that natural entrepreneurs there's something about whether it's a chemical balance in your mind, whether they say there's a lot of traits between an entrepreneur and a serial killer. And if I don't know if you ever heard that, because there's aspects of their mind of that willingness to go that extra mile to get something done, right? But that's interesting. I love your perspective. Obviously, you have a lot of knowledge, and you're very versed on everything you do, which I appreciate greatly. With yourself,
if I could, Jeff, just quickly,
100%.
Chuck a reverse theory again, because I like these discussions. By the way, maybe when I was 27, 28, I was holding on to ideas and ideals to be right because I was fairly naive in business. I don't hold on to any ideas or ideals, and I'm quite happy for my theories to be disproved if there's growth and evolution.
100%.
So that's why I want to go back on this conversation, not move on it. Your parents could have shown you everything you didn't want to be. So from a reverse perspective, the environment might have raised you that way from a contrarian perspective, because you said everything they did made you not want to be like that. So that environment could have made you not want to be like that. Also, I will say, someone gave me a theory that in the family dynamic, there is some natural biology when we're born that everyone in the family serves a different role. Now, this makes sense to me. If you think about it, if as a family, you and your wife or your partner and your male child and female child, if you were all disruptive entrepreneurs, your family would be screwed up because it would be an absolute mess. Everything would be chaos. There would be no order. And so a mentor of mine said to me that spontaneously in the family dynamic, there is balance. So, you'll have the hunter, the gatherer. You'll have the more, you might have the child that is more subservient, and then you might have the child that's more disruptive. People always say, I can't believe how different my kids are. And this mentor of mine says that's the natural order. They're supposed to be different because if you all serve the same role in the family dynamic, you wouldn't all be needed.
I love that. You're making my mind think, which I love.
Yeah.
And I'm a strong believer, Rob, that the day you die is the day you stop learning. So I love constantly reading, constantly learning. And you're saying that, and it's making me reflect on my family, right? We have a very vast difference. I'll give an example. My wife, I've been self-employed my whole life. We have a great relationship. She would never work for me. She needs her, and I appreciate that. She needs her 9-to-5 job. She needs her own independence. And as a male, I appreciate that. And she's supportive of me. She never comes to my office. She lets me do whatever. When I come with a new idea, a new venture, she just smiles, pats me on the back, and you're going to do well on it. And she's always been positive, but she never gets involved in none of my companies. And we've been married now for 17 years. We still don't have one bank account together. She's independent. She has her own stuff. So we do find that balance there, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, your wife doesn't work for you. Your wife's not supportive. No, she's independent and she's supportive in her own way. But we're very opposite that way. And then I look at my children. I have my daughter, which is the hustler. And then my son's very passive and very loving. Yeah. So it's a great mind to think of that and look at it in that perspective. I love that.
So that's me meeting you in the middle, because maybe if you look at your own family dynamic, maybe you were born to be more disruptive, more of a leader, more of a, an entrepreneur within the family dynamic. And that was where your natural genetics drove you. And then, of course, your environment enabled you to learn to be an entrepreneur, to lead. Because sales and marketing and leadership, they're all things you can learn. I want people to regard, even if everyone listening thinks, you know what, I'm a believer that traits are born. That's cool.
Yeah.
Just don't park or disown the fact that you can learn these traits that you want to learn as well. Because my worry when people say, oh, they're born that way, because I used to say that, oh, well, Tiger Woods was born that way. Anyone who's great was born that way. I'm not. The problem is that makes you a victim. Because if you fully own that, oh, well, I was just born that way. You can't change. And I think it's more empowering to think I can change, no matter how old I am. Because, some people say, oh, well, after 7, your personality is formed. And when you get to a certain age, you're never going to change. And an old dog, you can't teach him, new tricks. They're all limiting beliefs. But you could be 65 and start a business like Colonel Sanders did with KFC. Let me ask you, let me jump in there real quick, Rob. Do you believe you could teach work ethic to somebody? I think yes, I do. But I think they've got to be inspired by it.
Okay. And I think that's the difference from, I always compare pro athletes, and you're bringing up Tiger Woods. I always compare pro athletes to entrepreneurs. To get to that level where you're in Canada, you're a hockey player, a baseball player, a footballer, whatever it is, to get to that highest level in that sport, you have to have a certain drive and want that surpass. Because I believe there's athletic ability and talent will only take you a certain bit, to then the mindset kicks in, and that's what separates the top athletes from obviously the lower class. And work ethic is a huge part of it. So that's why I always want to dip into your mindset with work ethic. Is that something you said, like I said, is that something you could teach, or something that either you're born with? And once again, I'm going to use that born with, which I know you don't like. Let's tip into that.
I think everybody is born with the infinite potential to be anything. But our values are formed over time, i.e. what's most important to us. So does a teenager have a great work ethic when it comes to playing Fortnite? Fucking right. I mean, I'd love to model my work ethic on my son's Fortnite ability, because he could do that for 16 hours, no food, no lunch, no dinner, no sleep, because that in his life at that time is important to him. So can you force and motivate someone to have a hardcore work ethic on something they're not inspired by, that's not high on their values, that they're not really passionate about? I think that's hard work. And I think that is short term, and you might be able to leverage them, manipulate them, lead them, influence them. But in the end, they're going to go, nah. But I think work ethic, on a scale whereby it doesn't feel like work, because we all know there's times in our life when we do things and time stands still, and you look at your watch and like, whoa, I've been doing this 5 hours. And it's, you don't even need to eat or drink. I believe energy can come from being inspired. So work ethic comes from doing the things that are most important to you in your life.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And so if you want to motivate staff, for example, this is a bit I didn't say about the staff. What most employers are doing are going, this is my company and this is the way I want you to work. These are the values of my company. But a wise employer will find out what the values are of the individual, and then they will motivate them based on achieving their own personal values. And then when a staff member is working, doing your job, but meeting their values, that's when you have alignment, and that's when you remove friction.
With yourself, your children, you're obviously quite young still. Would you want them to pass in your footsteps, or you'd like them to follow their own footsteps? And when I mean that, like in your companies, work with you later on, where's your mindset with that? Is that too young still to think of?
Yeah, it's too young. The one thing I did want to raise with my children is for them to have the opportunity to be really great at something. And that's for 2 reasons, Jeff. One is I never got really great at anything, but I got quite good at a few things. And I felt like if I could have gone back and someone would have just guided me a bit, I could have got great at something. The next thing is I believe the world rewards people who are great at something and doesn't really reward people who are not bad at quite a lot of things.
100%.
So they're the 2 reasons why I wanted to raise kids who had the opportunity to be great at something. Bobby was absolutely great at his golf. I mean, he had 8 hole-in-ones by age 7. He really is great at golf, but we've got to the point now where it can't come from me anymore. It's got to come from him. So I back off. And
how old is he again, your son?
He's now 9.
Still quite young.
Exactly. And he's not really competed for 2 years, but I mean, you give him a golf club, he's just hitting the ball great. He practices for a month or 2 and, he's going to be able to compete at a national level really easy. He's got it already. So in raising my kids, they're the things I wanted. I wanted them to have the opportunity to be great at something. Now, in the early years, I was thinking, what do I want that to be? I realized that's living vicariously through them. So now I'm thinking, what can we spot that it would be for them? So my daughter is very expressive. She's got a really expressive face. She's very funny. She's very cheeky. And I've not met anyone who expresses emotion and happiness and can act through her facial expressions. So I'm going to send her to some drama classes, because that might be a way for her to find something that she could be great at expressing through herself, not through me. I never really pushed her on the golf, but she likes going to the golf, so I'll take her to golf. So actually, no, I'm not going to pursue or force or push or encourage my children to follow in my footsteps to run the companies. Unless they want to and they show real desire, I will try and watch what they love and go, let's give them an opportunity to go and express that, to try that. So because I love rock and metal, we always used to play it in the car. So Bobby really liked the instruments. So we got him a drum set and he likes playing the drums. So I'm going to now just try and give my kids the opportunities to find their thing. And I don't care what it is.
Yeah, that's the best mindset as a parent, right? You try to set their path and let them drive their own vehicle to wherever their path is going. So I appreciate that. Yeah. With yourself, I'm going to dive into one thing. Public speaking is a huge part of your life. Obviously, it's been disrupted now with this whole pandemic in the world. But when was your first public speaking? What age were you at?
2006.
2006. How was your
2006? 26 years old.
You want to hit memory lane and tell me what you felt when you got on stage? I always like hearing people's mindsets of public speaking, because it is a big fear for most people. How were you your first time?
Absolutely petrified, and I hated it.
Yeah.
And I read off a sheet of paper just in the corner. Didn't engage with the audience at all. Had no eye contact. But I think something inside me said, "You've got to give this a go," because I think I could see how it could be powerful to grow your business or become successful. And it was an additional area on top of the thing that you were doing. So you can buy property and then you can do public speaking, teaching property. You can have your business model and then you can be paid as a keynote speaker. You can be a celebrity and then be an after dinner keynote speaker. You can be a sports personality and then be an after dinner keynote speaker. And YouTube was just starting to get big back then. And at some point I must have worked out that actually public speaking online through video and podcasts, etc., was going to be a big thing. I will try most things and embrace most skills or technology if I think it can accelerate the growth of my businesses. And I mean, I've got 2 world records for public speaking.
Yeah, I want to dive into that.
Yeah.
What were those world records? I was reading on that.
The longest individual speech.
How long was that?
47 and a half hours nonstop. And then the longest team speech we broke twice. The first time we did it with just 4 of us. So we did 36 hours each. And then the next one we did. And we did.
So these are live speaking gigs with individuals in the crowd.
Yeah. And we raised hundreds of thousands of pounds for charity doing them as well, which was great.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
Where was your mindset? How did that all start? Like most people don't wake up and think, I'm going to do a 47-hour speech. How did that come about? When did that how much planning was put into that? And what were you like? How did you have enough content for that? Or you just went on and rambled and talked about life and was it all specific to a topic?
Yes, I think it must have been about 6 years ago now. So what got me on the trail was I want to do something different. And I want to do something that might make a good noise in our industry. And I want to do something no one else has done. Yeah. So I think when you come from those places, if you keep asking those questions, you find something interesting to do. I don't know if you remember when David Blaine was in that glass box in London and he lived in there for like 40 days.
Yeah.
Well, he must have just thought, what has no magician ever done? So that was where I came from. And things like press up or chin up world record, those sort of things are not relevant in my industry. It had to be something around business.
Yeah.
And then what did I speak on? Property and business. And I could speak for 147 hours on property and business. I mean, Jeff, we're an hour and a half in here and you and I could talk all day. I sense that. So that was the only thing I could talk for long periods about.
Yeah, that's awesome. Speaking about that time-wise, before we come to an end today, I want to grab a couple things, a couple questions I always ask all our guests. A few words describe how your friends would remember you when you pass one day. How would you want to be remembered?
How would I want to be, or how would I be?
how would you be? How would you be? That's a better way. How would you be remembered? Or how would you want to be remembered? I mean, there's certain things you can still change, right? So how would you want to be remembered by your closest friends or individuals or loved ones in a few words, if they're going to stand up there and give a little speech on who Rob Moore is?
So I'm very clear that the average experience with me is that something along the lines of, when I first saw Rob, I wasn't sure, but he got in my head, and I'm now a fan, and his work has made a real difference to me. Because I'm not the sort of guy that's vanilla, and I'm not the sort of guy that, when people have their first experience with me, they're like, whoa, that guy, he talks too fast, he's gobby, he's in your face. People aren't always sure about me at first, but I like that, because if you just agree with everything I say at first, well, I haven't really helped you in any way, have I? I've just edified your beliefs. But if I got under your skin a bit, even if you didn't really thought you liked me at first and you weren't sure, you didn't like my accent, you didn't like whatever, wears weird clothes, shouts at times, but then you gave me a chance and then my work impacted you, that's the impact I want to have on the planet.
Very good. The next question I always ask everybody at the end is, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I think it would definitely be, it could only be predicting the future. That's what it would be. Because if you can predict the future, anything in your life, you're going to make billions. I think that trumps everything. Predict the future.
With your, I'm going to ask one last question, and this is just going back here. With your public speaking,
I was going to say X-ray vision, but I don't know if that was appropriate.
No. With your public speaking, how many countries have you traveled? Have you been to Canada, US? How many countries have you traveled?
So I have listeners for my podcast and readers of my books in all those countries. But I've only done public speaking in maybe 3 or 4 different countries. Never Canada, America, Australia, and I'd love to. Have you been to Canada before? No, never.
Beautiful country. You got to visit one day.
Yeah,
if you come to Toronto, Canada, you got a place to stay here, buddy. We'll hook you up.
Thank you.
100%, brother.
Can I just say one thing, Jeff?
Yeah, 100%.
There's a superpower I definitely wouldn't want that I think people say they want. I would not want to be able to read people's minds as a superpower. I think that would be the biggest curse in the world. Imagine every minute of every day being able to know all the shitty things people think about you and all that. So
isn't that what Twitter's all about?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I appreciate that kind comment. Look, we're going to go to America once this lockdown is over. We're going to hire a Winnebago and I'm going to do a tour and interview a load of cool people for a podcast. So maybe we'll have to go north of the border and come stop your way.
We're the nice bunch across the border. I appreciate this, Rob. This has been an absolute pleasure. We're going to have you on again, 100%. Through all our show notes, I'm going to get all the information, get a hold of Rob. Links to all his books, links to his websites, everything like that. And once again, I greatly, greatly appreciate you taking your time in your busy schedule to come on the Jeff Lopes Inc. podcast. We had a little interruption there, but we got through it. 2, actually, one at the beginning, one at the end. So this has been a pleasure learning from you, listening to you, talking business with you. So thank you once again, buddy. Do you want anything you want to say out to our audience before we head out?
Thank you, Jeff. I'm really grateful. I always finish my podcast, the Disruptive Entrepreneur podcast, with the same saying I finish it all the time, which is, if you don't risk anything, you risk everything.
I love that. I always finish ours by saying, always move forward. Thank you, brother. Peace
Cheers.
out. That's a wrap for today. I hope everybody enjoyed our podcast today. A special thanks to Rob for taking time in his busy schedule to be a guest on our show. If you like the episode, like every week, tell your friends, tell the family. We were trying to build something special here. Leave a review, hit the subscribe button. 5 stars would be absolutely amazing. Until next week, always move forward.